When a cocky black belt called out a quiet teenage boy for a fun little spar, the parents laughed. Until the boy moved once and the whole gym forgot how to breathe. The joke started with a smirk. The instructor raised his voice just enough for everyone to hear, calling the boy forward as if he were picking a volunteer for a magic trick. Awkward chuckles rose from the parents against the wall. Some looked away, some whispered. No one expected the boy to answer. He kept his hands close, shoulders tight, head lowered. He shook his head once, a small, polite refusal, the kind that should have ended things. But the instructor didn't let go. He turned the boy's quiet no into a public game. Come on, 10 seconds, that's all. Don't be shy, more laughter. Forced, nervous. The boy's mother took a step forward, but the instructor talked over her. Relax, it's just for fun, he winked at the parents. He wanted the attention. He wanted the room to laugh with him. The boy stood there, still and silent, almost shrinking under the noise. Then something shifted. Maybe it was the pressure. Maybe it was the way the instructor kept pushing, louder each time. Maybe it was the way the parents stared, waiting to see if the boy would embarrass himself. The boy finally stepped forward, one small step. The gym fell quiet. The instructor's grin held for a moment, but his eyes flickered in confusion. Something in the boy's face had changed. The shyness was still there, but buried under something steadier, colder, focused. He stood in front of the instructor without a single word. The laughter died out. A strange tension spread through the room. No one could explain it yet, but something in the boy's eyes made even the instructor hesitate. Sarah Miller never tried to stand out. She moved through life with quiet steps and gentle words, always offering small smiles, always avoiding conflict. People mistook it for weakness, but she carried her own storms. She held them close, hidden, the way she held her memories of her father. She never bragged about who he was. She never mentioned the trophies, the titles, the way people bowed when he entered a room. She kept all of it tucked away, choosing peace over pride. Her son carried the same quiet. Ethan Miller walked through the world like someone trying not to disturb it. 15 years old, lanky, soft-footed, always looking down instead of up. Teachers said he was smart but withdrawn. Kids said he was shy. Adults said he was polite. No one saw the depth beneath it. No one guessed how much he had lost, or how heavy silence could become when it was inherited from grief. Ethan used to train with his grandfather every morning, slow, steady practice that built discipline instead of ego. His grandfather taught him breathing before striking, patience before power. They trained in calm, not noise. They trained for understanding, not applause. When his grandfather passed, Ethan stopped speaking more than necessary. He didn't quit training. He simply moved it into the empty spaces of his life, practicing alone, repeating old lessons like prayers he didn't want to forget. He never showed anyone what he could do. He didn't need to. At least, that's what he thought. Sarah noticed how he avoided crowds. She noticed the way he watched people instead of talking to them. She noticed how he stood behind her whenever they walked into a room. She worried, but she never pushed. He had lost someone who shaped him. She understood that kind of loss. She remembered it too well. Trevor Maddox did not understand anything quiet. He was the type of man who loved being the loudest voice in the room, especially when that room belonged to him. He ran his martial arts academy like a stage. Students lined up. Parents watched. He taught with big gestures and bold words, always performing confidence, always making sure people knew he was the black belt, the authority, the one in charge. He called it discipline. Others called it intimidation. He didn't see the difference. He liked being admired. He liked being feared more. He pushed kids harder than he needed to, not to make them stronger, but to make himself look tougher. Parents whispered sometimes. They said he went too far. They said he cared more about applause than teaching, but they stayed because he sounded convincing. Loud people often do. On the day everything changed, he noticed Ethan right away. The boy stood beside his mother, almost hiding behind her, hands tucked close, head lowered, a perfect target for someone like Trevor. Someone to tease, someone to test, someone to use as an example in front of the crowd. He saw Ethan and smirked. Weak posture, shy expression, small frame, easy win, easy laugh. Perfect for his show. The assistant instructor saw it too, but not the same way. She watched Trevor watching Ethan, and a small worry crossed her face. She had seen him embarrass kids before. She had seen how far he could push. She didn't like it, but she didn't outrank him. She stayed quiet, uneasy. Parents whispered to each other as the class ended. Some admired Trevor's energy, some found it too much. A few looked towards Sarah and Ethan with sympathy, noticing the boys' quiet discomfort. They didn't step in, they didn't question. They simply watched, waiting to see what Trevor would do. Ethan watched too. He kept his eyes down, pretending not to notice Trevor's glances. But he felt them. He knew exactly what it meant when someone like Trevor looked at someone like him. Weak people avoided attention. Loud people fed on it. The air felt heavy before Trevor even spoke. There was something off balance in the room. A quiet weight pressing against the noise. Ethan felt it. Sarah felt it. Even some of the kids felt it, shifting uncomfortably as Trevor began winding up for another one of his lessons. Justice hangs in the air long before it arrives. It waits. It watches. It builds slowly behind the eyes of people who rarely speak. Ethan didn't know justice was coming for Trevor. He only knew he wanted to go home. But Trevor wanted a moment of applause. He wanted the room to look at him, not the quiet boy near the door. He wanted to prove something. He didn't realize he was about to prove something very different. The tension grew heavier with each step Trevor took toward Ethan. Each smirk, each loud word meant to draw eyes. Parents fell silent, unsure where this was going. Kids looked between Trevor and Ethan with wide, curious eyes. Sarah tightened her hold on her daughter's hand, sensing trouble, sensing danger, sensing humiliation rising before her. She whispered her son's name softly, almost a warning. He didn't answer. He didn't look up. He simply waited, calm on the outside, carrying old lessons deep inside him. The room felt ready to tip. Everyone sensed the imbalance. Everyone felt the quiet pressure building. No one knew justice was already on its way, hidden inside a boy who never wanted to fight. The setup was complete, and the fall was coming. A whisper slipped through the room, barely audible, but sharp enough to cut the silence. Why do I feel like something's wrong? The question hung there, trembling in the air. Justice was waiting, and everyone could feel it, even if they didn't understand why. Trevor ended the class with a clap loud enough to make a few kids jump. He turned to the parents with a grin, soaking in the attention as if the room existed only for him. His voice rose, smooth and theatrical, the way it always did when he wanted an audience. All right, everyone. Before we wrap up, I want to show you what real combat awareness looks like. The parents stiffened slightly. Some forced polite smiles. Some leaned forward, curious. Some already sensed trouble but stayed silent. Trevor scanned the room in a slow, dramatic sweep, pretending to think deeply. But his eyes kept drifting toward the same spot, toward Ethan, toward the boy, who stood small, quiet, and unnoticed. The perfect contrast to his loud performance. Trevor snapped his fingers as if struck by genius. "You," he announced, pointing straight at Ethan. A few parents blinked. Some exchanged confused glances. Ethan froze where he stood, shoulders curling inward, hands fidgeting at his sides. Sarah placed a gentle hand on his arm. She didn't say a word, but her worry pulsed through the air. Trevor walked closer, each step heavy with confidence. "Come on up. It's just a simple demonstration." Ethan shook his head softly. "No thank you, sir. No aggression, no fear. Just a quiet boundary. But quiet boundaries mean nothing to men who worship their own voices." Trevor laughed loud enough for everyone to hear. "Come on, don't be shy. It's only 10 seconds. I promise I'll go easy on you." A few kids snickered under their breath. One whispered, "He's scared." Another added, "He'll get crushed." Parents exchanged uneasy looks but did nothing to stop it. No one wanted to challenge the instructor. No one wanted to stand out. Ethan lowered his head even more. His voice barely rose above a whisper. "I said no thank you." Trevor tilted his head like he hadn't heard it. "Wow, even your voice is scared." The kids laughed louder. The sound echoed painfully through the room. Ethan took a small step back. Sarah instinctively stepped forward, ready to shield him, but she paused when Trevor raised a hand dismissively. "Relax, ma'am. I'm not hurting him. It's just a lesson. Everyone here could learn something from it." He pointed around dramatically, feeding on the attention. "Look at him. No confidence, no awareness, no fight. This," he motioned to Ethan with a flourish, "is what you should never be." The words hit the room like a slap. A few parents frowned. The assistant instructor stiffened, her jaw tightening. A boy whispered to his friend, "He shouldn't talk like that," but Trevor didn't stop. He stepped even closer to Ethan, invading the boy's space. "Tell you what," he said, voice dripping with arrogance. "Why don't we ask the room?" He turned around and raised his arms. "Who honestly thinks this quiet kid could last even 10 seconds with me?" Laughter exploded. Nervous, forced. Wrong. Ethan didn't move, he didn't flinch, but something inside him cracked. Not anger, not fear, just a quiet resignation. A feeling he had known too many times. A feeling he had inherited from years of being overlooked, underestimated, ignored. He looked up for the first time. Just slightly, just enough. Trevor smirked, thinking he had won. "See, even he knows?" Sarah squeezed Ethan's arm gently. "Honey, you don't have to." He stepped forward. One single step, not confident, not proud, just calm, too calm. The room murmured with a new kind of curiosity. "Why does he look different?" A parent whispered. Ethan breathed in slowly, the way his grandfather once taught him. His shoulders settled, his hands relaxed, his posture softened into something neutral, neither fear nor aggression, just readiness. Trevor grinned wide, mistaking it for surrender. But a few parents noticed the change. Kids leaned forward. The assistant instructor's eyes narrowed. Something was shifting subtly, quietly, like a tide turning before anyone realizes the water has moved. Trevor didn't feel it yet, but the room did. Justice has a voice, and it begins with silence. Trevor rolled his shoulders back, still blind to the tension rising around him. He thought the room was laughing with him. He thought he controlled the moment. He thought Ethan was stepping forward because he had won some invisible battle of pride. He didn't notice how the laughter had faded. He didn't notice how the parents were no longer smiling. He didn't notice the strange stillness settling over Ethan like a second skin. He only saw what he wanted to see. An easy victory served on a quiet, obedient plate. He motioned Ethan toward the mat with a showman's flair. "Right this way, front and center." He turned to the room, grinning. "Let's give the young man some encouragement." A few claps echoed weakly. No one knew why their hands slowed. No one knew why the energy shifted from humor to unease. They only felt it, an instinctive warning that something was off. Ethan stopped at the edge of the mat. He didn't look up. He didn't speak. He simply breathed long and steady, like he was grounding himself. Like he was returning to a place the room could not see. Trevor circled him with exaggerated confidence. "Now pay attention, folks. This is what happens when someone with no training faces someone who actually knows what he's doing." He chuckled. 10 seconds, that's all he has to survive. 10. A boy near the wall whispered he shouldn't talk like that. Another whispered back, "He's gonna make the kid cry." Sarah stepped closer, her worry almost visible in the air. "Ethan," she murmured softly, desperate to protect him. But Ethan's eyes stayed forward, calm and distant, as if he were listening to something only he could hear. Trevor smirked. "Ready, kid?" Still no answer. He waved a hand in front of Ethan's face. "Hello, anyone home?" A few kids laughed again, but it felt wrong this time. Thin, shaky, unsure. The assistant instructor crossed her arms tightly. Her voice dropped to a whisper only she heard. "Why isn't he scared?" Trevor stepped back, assuming silence meant fear. "All right then, let's get started." He raised his voice to the room. "Everyone watch closely. He's about to show you exactly what not to do." Something in Ethan shifted at those words. A reminder, a memory, an old lesson from someone who approached strength differently than Trevor ever had. His shoulders dropped, his breathing steadied, his center lowered an inch, subtle but practiced. A parent noticed. Wait, does he know what he's doing? Trevor didn't hear it. He was too busy soaking in the attention. He lifted his chin proudly. "Let me show you the first mistake people make. They freeze up. They hesitate. He stopped talking, not because of Ethan, but because of the room. The silence had changed. It was no longer curious, no longer amused. It was heavy, weighted, expectant. Trevor felt a flicker of confusion but brushed it off. He cracked his knuckles dramatically. He lunged just slightly. Not an attack, just a starter step, but Ethan moved his foot half an inch effortlessly, like a feather caught in a breeze. It wasn't a dodge, it wasn't even a reaction, it was anticipation. The assistant instructor's eyes widened. She whispered, "That's not normal." Trevor cocked his head. "Getting nervous, kid?" Still no answer. Trevor chuckled, hiding the smallest tremor forming in his chest. Fine, we'll make this simple. He turned back to the room. 10 seconds, everyone. Count with me. No one counted. The room felt wrong. Ethan finally lifted his head. Just enough. His eyes met Trevor's for the first time. Calm, steady, unshaken, the smallest ripple of fear brushed Trevor's spine. He didn't understand it. He couldn't explain it. But it was there. He forced a laugh. Oh, don't look at me like that. I promise I'll keep it fun. Ethan blinked slowly. No aggression, no fear. Just a silence that felt stronger than any shout. Trevor stopped smiling. Parents leaned forward. Kids held their breath. Sarah pressed her hand against her chest, sensing something she couldn't put into words. Ethan stepped fully onto the mat. This time, he didn't look like someone being pushed. He looked like someone stepping into something inevitable. The room felt colder, the air felt tighter. A parent whispered, "Why does he look calm?" Another whispered back, "He's not nervous, he's ready." Trevor swallowed, suddenly unsure why his throat felt dry. He tried to shake it off, tried to regain control, tried to pretend the shift wasn't happening. Men like him always think they're in control, until they realize control was never theirs. He pointed at Ethan again, voice cracking just a touch. "Remember 10 seconds. That's it." Ethan's breathing deepened. Trevor's confidence wavered. A new tension sliced through the room. Justice wasn't here yet, but it was close. Very close, and everyone could feel it. Trevor paced in front of Ethan like a man preparing for a show. He thought he had already won. He lifted his chin high, stretching his arms, rolling his shoulders, making sure every parent saw the confidence in his movements. He wanted applause before anything even happened. He wanted laughter. He wanted the room to admire him for teaching the shy kid a lesson. He didn't notice how no one was laughing anymore. He didn't notice how the kids had gone quiet. He didn't notice the way Sarah watched him with a fear that burned behind her calm expression. He only saw Ethan, small, silent, still a perfect target. "Let's give the class something to remember," he said loudly. "A real-life example of what not to do." Ethan didn't move. Trevor stepped closer. "Go ahead, show them your stance." Ethan's voice was quiet, steady. "I don't want to fight," Trevor smirked. "Oh, you will. That's the lesson. Sometimes the fight comes to you." A ripple of discomfort moved through the parents. A few looked toward the assistant instructor, hoping she might intervene. She didn't. She couldn't. She only whispered under her breath, "This is going too far." Trevor leaned in, voice low but sharp enough to cut. "Just try not to embarrass yourself, all right." The room stiffened. A kid muttered, "That's messed up." Trevor lifted his arms toward the parents again. "Watch this. He'll freeze. Happens every time." Fear locks the whole body. Ethan looked at the floor, breathing slow, controlled, trying to keep his calm. His fingers curled slightly at his sides. Not in anger, but in restraint. He didn't want this. He didn't want attention. He didn't want to hurt anyone. And Trevor kept pushing. "Come on," Trevor said. "Show everyone how a beginner looks. Show them what not to do." Ethan's eyes lifted, slowly, quietly, with a calmness that wasn't normal for a 15-year-old facing humiliation. Sarah whispered urgently, "Ethan, you don't have to prove anything." He stepped half an inch forward. "Mom," he murmured. "It's okay." Just 2 words. But they carried something steady, grounded, old. A tone she hadn't heard from him since his grandfather passed. Trevor laughed at the moment, thinking he had cornered Ethan into compliance. "There you go. Confident. I like that. Let's see what you've got." But the assistant instructor felt the shift, the quiet change in the air. Her eyes narrowed. "No, that's not confidence. That's something else." Ethan exhaled once, long and deep. His shoulders relaxed, his spine straightened. His breathing steadied into a pattern too controlled for a beginner. The silence around him thickened. Parents leaned forward without meaning to. Kids held their breath. Trevor's smirk faltered for half a second. Just a flicker, but enough for the room to see it. He shook it off quickly. "Trying to impress your mom? Cute. But this isn't a game." Ethan didn't blink. Trevor pointed to the floor. "Get ready. I'm not going to hurt you too much." That line broke something in the room. A few parents exchanged angry whispers. One dad muttered, "This is ridiculous." Another parent murmured, "He's bullying him." Trevor heard nothing. His ego was too loud. He lifted his hands into a loose guard, mocking Ethan with dramatic footwork. "All right, lesson starts now. Watch close, everyone. Ethan didn't change his posture, didn't adopt a stance, didn't raise his hands, he simply breathed. Trevor scoffed. See, frozen, just like I said. Ethan's eyes lifted to meet his, not threatening, not scared, just present. For the first time, Trevor hesitated. What's with those eyes? He muttered. He forced a grin to hide his discomfort. All right, let's break the ice. He lunged forward. Not a full strike, just a quick step meant to startle Ethan, make him flinch, give the room a laugh. Ethan didn't flinch. He stepped half a foot to the right, smooth and quiet, as if he had expected the movement before it happened. Trevor blinked. Lucky guess. Ethan's breathing stayed steady. Trevor tried again, a sharper step this time, trying to catch Ethan off guard. Ethan slid back, weight-centered, calm as water, whispers rose. How did he move like that? He didn't even look scared. Is he trained? Trevor forced a laugh louder than necessary. Just warming up. Don't get too excited, but the tremor in his voice betrayed him. He tried to regain control, turning to the parents with forced confidence. All right, back to the lesson. Pay attention. This next part shows how beginners panic. He whipped around. Ethan was still calm, breathing perfectly, watching him, not fearfully, but with a kind of understanding that unsettled Trevor more than any punch could. Trevor snapped. Stop staring like that. Ethan didn't react. Trevor barked louder. I said, stop staring. Ethan blinked once, slowly, deliberately. Trevor's chest tightened. This wasn't going the way he planned. The room wasn't laughing. No one looked entertained. No one admired him. They were watching Ethan. Watching Trevor lose the moment he thought he owned. He tried to shake off the creeping embarrassment. Fine. You want to play serious? Let's play. He stepped forward fast. Too fast for a boy like Ethan. At least that's what he believed. But Ethan moved before the step finished. A small shift. A precise pivot. A quiet adjustment born from years of lessons he never bragged about. The assistant instructor whispered, "Oh my God, he knows exactly what Trevor's doing." Trevor didn't hear. His pride drowned out everything. He planted his feet, ready to show the first real attack. He raised his guard. He narrowed his eyes. He prepared to strike. The room held its breath, and Ethan's eyes sharpened, calm, focused, unwavering. Everything broke open the moment Trevor attacked. Trevor shot forward with a speed meant to overwhelm. A sharp jab cutting through the air with enough force to make the closest parents flinch. It was fast. It was loud. It was meant to scare Ethan into freezing. But Ethan didn't freeze. He moved. Not in panic, not in fear, in precision. A tiny slip to the left. Barely a step, barely a shift. His shoulder dipped just enough for the punch to skim past him without touching a single hair. No wasted motion, no flinch. Just perfect timing. A gasp cut through the room. Trevor stumbled a fraction, unable to hide his confusion. He moved early. But Ethan didn't look like someone who moved early. He looked like someone who knew exactly when the punch would come. Trevor tried again, quicker this time, snapping another jab straight toward Ethan's chin. Ethan's foot slid back 1 inch. A movement so small and controlled it made the assistant instructor whisper under her breath, "He's reading him. He's actually reading him." Trevor's eyes twitched. He launched a third blow, sharp, deliberate, a feint to bait a reaction. Ethan didn't fall for it. He didn't react at all. He simply waited, calm as water, until the real strike came. Then he shifted again, slip, effortless, breathing steady. Trevor's punch met nothing but air. A murmur rippled through the parents. How is he doing that? That's not luck. He's predicting him. Trevor shook out his hands, trying to laugh it off, but the forced sound cracked halfway. Okay, you got lucky twice. He swung a kick toward Ethan's ribs. Higher force, higher commitment. Ethan leaned back just enough so the kick stopped inches from touching him. Trevor's foot landed off balance. He frowned hard now. "Stop moving like you know what I'm doing," Ethan breathed in quietly. Trevor's face red. He fired 3 strikes in a row, jab, cross, hook, each one cutting the air sharply, each one meant to hit hard enough to end the demonstration before it became embarrassing. Ethan weaved between them, smooth, controlled. No fear in his stance, no tension in his body. Every movement was clean. Every dodge was perfect. It was unnatural for someone who looked so shy, someone who refused to fight, someone who tried to stay invisible. Parents leaned closer, wide-eyed. Kids stood on their toes for a better view. Even the assistant instructor took a step forward. Trevor's voice rose a pitch. "Stand still." Ethan didn't obey. He didn't even blink. Trevor aimed a sweeping leg kick, trying to catch Ethan's ankles, but Ethan lifted his foot lightly, letting the kick pass beneath him with quiet ease. He landed gently, balanced on both feet as if nothing happened. Trevor's breathing quickened. Sweat dotted his forehead. This wasn't a shy kid anymore. This wasn't someone freezing under pressure. This wasn't someone who needed protecting. This was someone trained, someone patient, someone dangerous in the way only a disciplined fighter can be, calm under chaos. Trevor clenched his jaw and lunged again, throwing a heavier combination, each strike more desperate than the last. Ethan didn't back up this time. He stepped forward, a single controlled micro-step that placed him inside Trevor's reach. Trevor flinched, actually flinched, as Ethan slipped past the incoming fist and touched him lightly on the ribs with 2 fingers. Just 2, a tap, soft, precise, deadly accurate. Trevor froze. The room held its breath. Ethan stepped back again, calm as ever. That tiny tap felt louder than any hit Trevor had thrown. It wasn't force. It wasn't power. It was placement. Perfect placement. The assistant instructor whispered, "That was a master's touch." Trevor recoiled as if burned, fury twisting his face. "Don't touch me like that." He launched forward recklessly, swinging with raw ego instead of technique. Ethan slid sideways, letting the punch glide past as if he'd known the exact angle beforehand. Parents covered their mouths. Kids whispered fiercely. "He's making Trevor miss everything. He's not scared at all." "He's trained. He has to be trained." Trevor tried to regain control. "Enough. I'll finish this." He stepped hard, grabbing for Ethan's shoulder, aiming to force a clinch. Ethan turned his body at the perfect angle, letting Trevor's grip land on nothing. Trevor's balance broke. His chest opened. Ethan moved. A soft step inward. A gentle hand on Trevor's arm. A controlled shift of weight. And Trevor's entire momentum turned against him before he realized what was happening. He stumbled forward, caught himself, and jerked back with a snarl. "You little..." Ethan remained still. Breathing slow, eyes clear, no pride, no arrogance, just control. Trevor's frustration boiled into rage. "Fine, you want to play real? I'll give you real." He bent his knees, preparing for a full takedown. Something forceful enough to pin Ethan to the mat and end the humiliation. The assistant instructor gasped. He can't do that to a kid. But Trevor wasn't listening. Ego had taken the wheel entirely. He lunged with everything he had. Full speed, full commitment. A grown man's strength aimed at a teenage boy. The room erupted in shouts. "Stop! Trevor, don't! Hey!" But before anyone reached them, Ethan moved. Not fast, not frantic. Just right. He stepped into the takedown, not away from it. Catching Trevor's arm, redirecting it, letting Trevor's own power guide his path. A perfect pivot, perfect grip, perfect balance. Trevor's eyes widened in shock. He felt the shift. He felt his own momentum slip out of his control. Ethan twisted gently, calm, soft, precise, and Trevor lifted off the ground. A grown black belt thrown by a boy who hadn't raised his voice once. Time seemed to slow. Parents gasped. Kids screamed. The assistant instructor covered her mouth. Trevor landed flat on his back with a thundering smack that echoed through the gym like a verdict. Silence. The kind that hits the world so hard it steals the air from your lungs. Ethan stepped back immediately, giving space, not posturing, not gloating. Just breathing, calm, collected, untouched. Trevor stared up at him, eyes wide, fear rising behind the humiliation. A black belt, a grown man, a proud instructor, flattened by the boy he tried to use as a joke. The room did not move, the room did not speak. The shift was complete. Trevor was no longer the authority. Ethan was no longer the shy kid. The power had flipped so suddenly, so violently, so undeniably, that the entire gym knew something irreversible had just happened. Trevor's voice finally broke the silence, a cracked whisper. "What are you?" Trevor tried to push himself up, but his arms shook beneath him. The floor felt colder than it should, and the ceiling looked farther away. His breath came out uneven, sharp, humiliating. Around him, the room stayed frozen, as if even the air refused to move until someone explained what they had just witnessed. Ethan didn't step forward. He didn't offer a hand. He simply stood there, steady and silent, the same way he had stood at the beginning, except now the room finally understood that his silence meant something different. It meant control. It meant discipline. It meant danger wrapped in calm. Trevor forced a weak laugh, trying to patch the cracks spreading quietly through his pride. "Lucky toss," he muttered, but the words fell flat. No one believed them. Not even he did. He lunged again, more out of wounded pride than skill, trying to grab Ethan's ankle this time. Ethan lifted his foot just enough to avoid the grip, then set it down with the softest sound. A single inch of movement made Trevor look like he was grappling with a ghost. A parent whispered, "That wasn't luck," another whispered. He saw it before it happened. Trevor pushed himself up again, angrier now, his voice trembling with frustration. "Don't move like you know me." Ethan didn't answer. His eyes held steady, his breathing calm. Not once did he raise his hands to strike. He didn't. Trevor charged with a wild right hook, a sloppy mix of pride and panic. Ethan leaned aside with a simple sidestep, letting the punch cut across empty space. Trevor's own momentum yanked him forward and he stumbled. The assistant instructor finally whispered what the rest of the room was starting to realize. "He's not reacting. He's predicting everything." Trevor turned sharply, sweat beading across his forehead, chest rising and falling too fast. He felt the room watching him. He felt their judgment. He felt the humiliation tightening around his throat. "Stop dodging," he yelled. Ethan blinked once, calm, slow, silent. That single blink enraged Trevor more than any insult could have. He rushed forward, trying to close the distance, trying to grab, trying to land something, anything, that would make this nightmare stop. Ethan shifted his stance, a subtle drop of the center, a quiet adjustment of weight. Nothing flashy, nothing aggressive. Just the kind of movement you see in fighters who learn for years under someone wise, patient, and unwilling to waste a single breath. Trevor threw a desperate knee strike. Ethan angled his body, letting the knee slide past him. Trevor grabbed for Ethan's wrist in a last attempt at control. Ethan's arm moved like water, slipping out of the grip before it formed. A parent whispered, "This isn't possible." Ethan stepped in close. Not to strike, not to hurt, just to show exactly how much control he had. His hand touched Trevor's chest with a light pressure, barely anything, but the placement was perfect. Trevor froze like someone had pressed a button he didn't know he had. He stumbled back, losing his balance again. His breathing grew uneven. His face tightened with anger that was slowly twisting into fear. "Don't touch me," he barked. But the command cracked. Sarah stepped forward, her voice soft but trembling. "Ethan, please be careful." Ethan didn't turn. He didn't break focus, but he softened just slightly, recognizing the worry in her voice. Trevor noticed the tiny softness and mistook it for weakness. He shouted, "Don't look away from me," and shot forward in blind rage. Ethan's eyes snapped back to him instantly. Trevor swung at full force. Ethan dipped under the punch, stepped around him, and placed one gentle tap on the back of Trevor's shoulder. A tap so small it looked like a mistake. Trevor lost his footing as if the world shifted beneath him. He stumbled forward, hitting the mat with his palms. Gasps erupted around the room. Kids' eyes widened. Parents stared, speechless. Trevor spun around, face red with humiliation, pride crumbling faster than he could hide. "Stop playing with me." Ethan stood still, breathing calmly, watching him with a kind of quiet empathy no one expected. It wasn't pity. It was understanding, the kind you give someone fighting the wrong battle. Trevor's voice cracked again. "Who are you?" Ethan didn't answer. He didn't have to. Trevor charged one last time, screaming in frustration, throwing everything he had into a full-bodied takedown attempt. A move meant to crash into Ethan and end everything in one violent motion. The room erupted. "No!" "Trevor, stop. He's just a kid." But Ethan was already moving. He stepped into the takedown, not away from it. His hands guided Trevor's arm. His body pivoted with flawless timing, his feet planted with precision, and in one smooth, effortless motion, he redirected all of Trevor's force back into Trevor himself. Trevor soared off his own momentum. The flip was perfect, controlled, unforced, clean. He hit the mat flat on his back, shock blasting across his face. Silence filled the room again. Ethan stepped back, breathing slow, his expression unchanged. Not proud, not angry, not triumphant, just calm. Trevor stared up at him with eyes full of fear, humiliation, disbelief. His voice broke into a whisper meant only for Ethan, but the whole gym heard it. How? How are you doing this?" Ethan looked down, quiet, steady, unshaken. The justice moment hung thick in the air, pulsing like a truth waiting to break open. The entire room leaned forward without realizing it. Every heartbeat synced with the silence. Every breath waited for Ethan to speak. Every eye stayed locked on the boy who moved like memory, discipline, and legacy combined. Trevor swallowed hard. The whisper returned, shaken, small. Nothing like the man who started the day. What are you? The room held still, trembling on the edge of revelation. The next moment would break everything open. Trevor lay on the mat, staring up at Ethan like he was seeing a stranger, a ghost, a mirror showing everything he never understood about real strength. His breath rattled in his chest. His hands trembled when he tried to push himself up. The room didn't move. No one dared. Parents stood frozen. Kids clung to their gear bags with wide eyes. Even the assistant instructor looked shaken, her gaze darting between Trevor and Ethan as if trying to make sense of what she had witnessed. Ethan didn't move toward Trevor. He didn't raise his hands. He simply waited, calm and still, the way someone waits for a storm to pass even as lightning still flickers. Trevor finally managed to sit up, his voice rough and cracking. "Who taught you that?" The words scraped out of him, heavy with disbelief, heavy with the kind of fear that only comes when a man realizes he has been deeply wrong. Ethan didn't look away, but he didn't speak either. The question didn't belong to him, it belonged to someone else. Sarah stepped forward slowly, her hands shaking slightly. Not from fear of Ethan, but from the pressure of finally revealing a truth she had tried to keep quiet for years. Her voice reached the room softly, almost apologetically. "My father," she said. Trevor frowned in confusion. "Your father?" Sarah nodded once. Calm, steady. Ethan trained with him every day until he passed. A whisper rippled through the gym. "Wait, who was her father?" She said he trained every day, so he's not just some shy kid. Sarah hesitated, then spoke a name the room wasn't prepared for. Master David Rourke. Gasps cut through the silence. One parent lifted a hand to their mouth. Another whispered, "No way." A third actually bowed their head instinctively. Trevor froze, absolutely froze, as the realization hit him harder than the fall. David Rourke, a legend, a national champion, a teacher whose lessons were used in schools, competitions, and seminars across the country. A man known not for trophies, but for philosophy, for humility, patience, and the kind of discipline Trevor had claimed to teach but never understood. Everything in Trevor's face twisted: shock, humiliation, shame, fear, until it collapsed into something small. I mocked his grandson. His voice cracked mid-sentence. Sarah's expression remained calm, not proud, not triumphant. Just honest. Ethan learned under him for 8 years. My father believed in building strength quietly, not for crowds. Ethan lowered his eyes slightly, honoring the name that had just been spoken. Trevor looked around at the parents, at the kids, at the assistant instructor, all staring, all judging, all seeing him stripped of everything he pretended to be. His voice shook. "Why didn't you say anything?" Sarah answered gently. "Because real strength doesn't need to be announced." The words hit Trevor harder than the throw had. A few parents murmured in agreement. One said under their breath, "That's the lesson he should have taught." Trevor's shoulders sagged. Sweat dripped from his chin. His breath came shallow and sharp. He looked at Ethan again, this time without arrogance, without pride, without the shield of authority, just a man facing the consequences of his own ego. "I embarrassed you," he whispered. "I tried to make you a joke." Ethan didn't respond at first. Then he bowed, small, respectful, controlled. The same bow his grandfather taught him, the same bow that spoke louder than any insult. Trevor swallowed hard. Why didn't you hit me?" Ethan finally spoke, voice soft but steady. "Because real strength doesn't shout." The room absorbed the line like a truth they had all forgotten. Trevor lowered his head, the weight of his own actions sinking deeper. His pride cracked open, leaving him exposed in a way no throw ever had. He whispered, "I'm sorry." The words barely left his throat, but they echoed across the silent gym. Every parent watched. Every student listened. Justice wasn't loud. It was quiet, controlled, earned. Ethan stood there calm as ever, the storm already passing. The room wasn't done shifting yet. The second wave of consequences, public and personal, was about to break. Trevor stayed kneeling on the mat, shoulders shaking, the weight of what he had done pressing into him from every direction. He tried to breathe, but each breath felt sharp, heavy, tangled with humiliation he could no longer hide. The parents weren't whispering anymore. They were staring straight at him, not impressed, not amused, disappointed, the worst kind of judgment. Some of the kids stepped back, no longer seeing him as a strong instructor, but as a man who forgot what strength was supposed to mean. The assistant instructor exhaled shakily, her voice barely a whisper. This is what Master Rourke stood for. Control, respect, humility. Trevor flinched at the word humility as if it burned. Ethan watched him without gloating, without anger. Just quiet understanding, the kind you only gain from years of learning under someone who taught strength with patience, not pride. Trevor pressed a hand to the mat and finally stood, unsteady on his feet. He turned to Ethan with eyes stripped bare. "I owe you more than an apology." Ethan didn't move. Trevor swallowed hard, then turned towards Sarah, his voice trembling. "And I owe you a greater one. I disrespected your son. I disrespected your family. I disrespected your father's teachings." Sarah nodded slowly, gently. "We all forget sometimes," she said softly. "The mistake becomes the lesson when we choose to learn from it." A few parents murmured in agreement. A mother near the back whispered, "That's what real martial arts is supposed to sound like." A father nodded. Not all this shouting and showing off. Trevor's face collapsed into shame. He turned to his students, his voice barely holding together. "I have failed you today. I taught with pride, not wisdom. I tried to make strength something loud, when it should have been something steady." A kid near the front swallowed hard. "Are you going to be different now?" Trevor nodded slowly. "I have to be." His eyes drifted back to Ethan. He reminded. Ethan bowed his head slightly, acknowledging the truth in silence. One of the older students, usually the first to cheer Trevor on, stepped forward. "Sensei." He moved like someone who trained forever. Why didn't he fight back? Trevor looked at Ethan again. Ethan answered first, quietly. "Because hurting someone who's already losing is not strength." The room shook with that truth. Parents blinked, kids straightened. Even the assistant instructor lowered her gaze, moved by the weight of the words. Trevor's voice cracked. "I forgot that." Another parent whispered, "He's only 15, someone else added. "Imagine the discipline it takes to hold back like that." Sarah's eyes softened with pride she rarely allowed herself to show. Ethan learned the old way, strength with purpose, skill with heart. Trevor looked at the ground, shame washing over him in waves. "I don't deserve forgiveness," he said. Ethan spoke again, calm and steady. "Forgiveness isn't earned. It's allowed." Trevor's breath caught. The room held still. Sarah stepped closer, offering a small but meaningful. "Everyone falls," she said quietly. "The important part is how they rise." Trevor looked around the gym, seeing his students not as an audience, but as people watching him take responsibility. At last, he bowed deeply, lower than he ever had in the gym before. "I apologize to all of you. I lost my way." The assistant instructor bowed back. Parents nodded. Kids followed, not out of obedience, but out of respect for the honesty, the humility finally appearing where arrogance once stood. Then Trevor turned to Ethan one last time. "Thank you for showing me what real strength looks like." Ethan bowed once more, controlled and respectful, carrying the legacy of his grandfather without ever speaking his name. The justice had settled, the room had shifted, and Trevor, humbled, changed, exposed, finally took the first step toward becoming the instructor he once pretended to be. The air eased, the storm was passing. What remained was the quiet power of truth. When the gym finally settled, the silence felt different, softer, warmer. The fear was gone, the shock had faded. What remained was a quiet understanding that everyone in the room had witnessed something rare, something that reached deeper than a fight, deeper than skills, deeper than a moment of humiliation. They had seen the truth about strength. They had seen what happens when arrogance collides with discipline, and when a quiet heart stands firm against a loud ego. Parents gathered their children, but no one rushed to the door. They kept looking back at Ethan, not in fear, not in awe, but in respect. The kind earned only through character, not force, not noise, character. One mother whispered to her son, "Remember this, real power never has to show off." The boy nodded slowly, replaying every moment in his mind. He had seen Trevor shout. He had seen Trevor boast. He had seen Trevor try to win with noise instead of skill. And he had seen Ethan do the opposite. Silent, steady, unmoved. A father placed a hand on his daughter's shoulder. "You don't judge people by how loud they are," he said gently. "You judge them by how they act when they have the chance to hurt someone and choose not to." The girl nodded, eyes lingering on Ethan as he stood beside his mother. Not proud, not triumphant, just calm in the way only someone trained in real discipline could be. Trevor stood off to the side, wrestling with the lesson he had been forced to learn. He had spent years teaching kicks and strikes, but had forgotten the deeper purpose behind them. He realized now that technique meant nothing without humility, power meant nothing without restraint, and leadership meant nothing if it came from fear instead of respect. He watched Ethan and felt something he had not felt in years: humility, true grounding humility, the kind that makes a man rebuild himself from the inside out. The assistant instructor approached Ethan quietly. "You reminded everyone what this place should stand for," she said softly. "Not strength on display, but strength in control." Ethan didn't lift his eyes, but the small nod he gave carried more weight than any speech Trevor had ever delivered. She added, "Your grandfather would be proud." A faint breath left Ethan's chest, half relief, half memory, because she was right. Master Rourke would have told him that a warrior who must show power has already lost. A warrior who knows when to hold back has already won. Sarah watched her son with a pride she rarely showed. For years, she had protected him from the world's noise, shielding him from places where loud people used silence as a weapon against the quiet. But now she realized something important. Ethan didn't need protection from noise. He carried something stronger than noise, something that could silence an entire room without a single shout. She touched his arm gently. "You handled yourself with dignity," she whispered. Ethan looked at her, his calm finally softening into something warm. "I just did what he taught me," he murmured. She smiled, tears gathering softly. "And you honored him." A few students approached cautiously. One spoke, voice trembling with honesty. "I used to think being loud made you strong," he said. "But I was wrong." Another student added, "You didn't even hit him hard. You just knew." Ethan didn't claim credit. He didn't explain. He didn't brag. He simply answered in the only way that fit who he was. Strength isn't about winning. It's about control. The students absorbed the words like they were truths they had needed for a long time. Lessons they had missed because noise had drowned them out. Trevor stepped closer, but he didn't speak right away. He took a deep breath, one that shook with shame and understanding. "I thought strength was something big," he admitted softly. "Something loud, something people could see." Ethan looked at him calmly. Trevor swallowed. "But you showed me that strength doesn't need an audience. It doesn't need applause." He lowered his gaze. "It just needs purpose." The truth hung heavy between them, shaping the moment with surprising gentleness. Trevor lifted his eyes again. "I will do better." Ethan nodded, accepting the promise without judgment. As families left the gym, the whispers had changed. No longer mocking Ethan, no longer praising Trevor. Instead, every conversation echoed the same truth. Strength lives in quiet places, in patience, in the space between reaction and restraint, in the heart of someone who chooses integrity over impulse. The gym itself felt different, cleaner, calmer, almost reverent, as if Ethan's quiet had washed away the arrogance that once filled the air. The message lingered in every corner. Never judge someone by how they look. Never assume quiet means weak. Never mistake noise for power. Arrogance collapses under truth, and truth needs only a single moment to stand tall. Ethan had given them that moment. He had shown them that real warriors don't fight to be seen. They fight only when they must, and even then they fight with control, not ego. The gym learned a new lesson that day. Real power isn't loud, and real warriors don't need to prove themselves because true strength speaks for them.